call the roll.
Thank you. Richard Anderson.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews.
Here.
Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
Leo Kukunis.
Here.
Christopher Kanega.
Here.
James Killian.
Here.
Marcia King.
Here.
Thomas Lynch.
Here.
Teresa Martin.
Here.
Deborah McCutcheon.
Here.
Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Ullman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise. Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum present with 95.45% of the delegates present, 4.55% absent.
Thank you. I'll now need a motion to approve the calendar of business if there's no additions or corrections to the calendar. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the calendar of business for November 2nd.
Second.
Right. Moved in second. All those in
I'm
favor?
sorry. Today's the 16th.
Oh, gosh, who wrote that down? The 16th. No, we're the journal of the 2nd.
Yeah.
Oh, the calendar of business.
Yes, the calendar. Yeah.
Why I didn't mention the date, did I? Anyway, we're doing fine. We got moved in second to approve the calendar of business. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Vicky confusing me. Approval of the Journal of November. You should have received a copy of the Journal of November 2nd, 2011. Is there any additions or corrections to the Journal? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the Journal?
Motion to approve the journal of November 2nd.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I see a county commissioner hiding behind the pole there. The next order of business is...
You would like me to approach the table?
The chair is approaching the table. Is approaching the chair.
Slowly return.
Wow. That's one of the first talkies.
It was a dark and stormy night. The county commissioners met this morning and did essentially two things. One, we got a report from Paul Rashinskas on the issues with regard to the housing and the home program, and I know that that Tom Lynch and I share a great concern with regard to the serious cutback in funds. We are doing fairly well given the resources that we have, but with regard to the charge that the consortium has, they have seen a fall off in the interest, or let's say the pursuit of home ownership. The thrust will be on rental programs, and I believe that that's probably consistent with where the economy is right now. And there is the issue of the need continues to exist. The concern is that if we do create jobs, for example, Open Cape is coming on board to provide an opportunity for employment, we have to have a place for people to live. The other thing that we did today was we had the evaluation of Paul Nizwicki, and I can assure you there was no beatification, but there was almost a coronation. He's been doing a good job, and that we certainly support him, because the main thing that we emphasize to him as far as goals is the continuation of the pursuit of a legitimate, viable, and sustainable wastewater management effort. And just before I came over here, I was at the town of Barnstable, where the review committee was meeting, and they did make a very definite statement in supporting the scientific viability of the estuary management activity. So, and that will be online within a week, I think. But in any case, that was recorded. We have gratitude for the hospitality from the town of Barnstable. Thank you very much. It was a great venue as far as, and it was standing room only, so that was all good. So with that, let's see, Tony Yarmouth. I didn't see you last night, Spiro. We had a brilliant presentation on the Cape Light Compact, and also got support from Peter Kenny on supporting many of the things that we had suggested to the town, and but predictability is a very important issue with regard to making those choices, and it was clear that it was the town of Yarmouth that made those choices, so that was something that was very useful. So with that, I'm done.
Okay, is there any questions for Councilor Doherty or Commissioner Doherty on anything that we discussed?
If only.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. Is there any communications from public officials? Okay, well, I guess then now we're going to hear from Open Cape Corporation CEO Dan Gallagher. You're on. No, the green light have to be lit.
Okay, it's on now. Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here with you to bring you up to date on the status of the Open Cape project in our region, and to answer any questions you might have for me regarding the project. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm going to take a few minutes just to run through a couple of slides. I've provided you with some background materials in hard copy that you can use and take home and read at your leisure. A couple of them I'll refer to today. For those who aren't fully familiar or who are new to this, the Open Cape Corporation was started. Teresa Martin, who was one of the founding principals of Open Cape about 5 years ago, I think now, that we started this as a bunch of volunteers to address some specific problems, has matured, and we are a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. It's a charitable corporation. Our charitable purpose with the IRS is to reduce the burden of government. We have a representative board geographically, and as well, it represents the interests of the community. So we have a mishmash of a selectman from Sandwich, a town manager from Brewster, the IT director of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. So we try to keep a representative board of directors on hand. The concept is to develop the 21st century infrastructure and telecommunications for our region. As some of you know, I worked at the Cape Cod Community College beginning in 2005 and was horrified when I arrived there to find that the college with 5,000 students and well over 1,000 computers and 70 servers had 3 T1 lines, very low capacity, at about $45,000 a year. I almost died. I had never worked on the Cape or lived on the Cape at that time. And myself, Teresa, and some others, Art Gaylord in particular from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and Gary Delius, said we really need to have this infrastructure if our region is going to have any potential for growth in the future. It's no different than roads, water mains, and I like to say if you didn't get a canal in 1820, if you didn't get a railroad station in 1850, if you didn't get a highway off-ramp in 1950 from President Eisenhower, your community suffered. It didn't grow economically and otherwise, and the same thing's true for fiber optics in the 21st century. So we intended to build that. It's going to cost $40 million to build it. We have all that funding. It's listed there. It's also in the document that I gave you. And the fundamental system is 350 miles of fiber optic cable run throughout southeast Massachusetts. A microwave public safety backup system. Early on, when we were looking into this, we were going to do all microwave, and it really isn't the ultimate solution that fiber is. But we had studied the Hurricane Katrina down in Louisiana and really concluded that it was essential to have that in our community for the violent winter storms we suffer and hurricanes for our public safety folks, so we kept that in there. And a regional co-location center, which is on this county complex. That's what it looks like. The purple line represents the 350 miles of fiber optics. The green line represents the microwave public safety backup system. And the green bullseye there in the county complex is where the co-location center is. So we did a comprehensive solution on Cape Cod, but ultimately we could have run fiber optics all over Cape Cod. If we don't have further connectivity to the rest of the world in 2 locations, it does us no good. That's why we chose to go to Providence. There's a major connection point there that goes on to New York and the rest of the world, and we chose Brockton that goes on to a location at 1 Summer Street in Boston, which is the hub for New England for all internet access. That's why we did that. We would have preferred to build fiber optic cable undersea to Martha's Vineyard, but our timeline is very limited with the funding, and we would never get through the environmental studies and permitting, so we've chosen to do only a microwave solution over to Martha's Vineyard. And we're leasing capacity on an existing fiber line out to Nantucket. This is the status of the project, the co-location center, the former public safety building of the county here, next to the tower. Demolition will begin in December. We have our demolition permit. We have the Old Kings Highway permit, and we are submitting our construction permit on Monday. So that's about to begin and should be done in May. The network construction will begin in January. It's taken us really a long time, 2 years, to get through what are very difficult processes in getting access to telephone poles. It's really a challenge. You have to go through Verizon and N-Star to get access to those poles, and National Grid for us because some of their territory is included here. It's been the biggest challenge that we have, and the next biggest challenge is crossing the Cape Cod Canal. We wanted to directionally bore underneath it with a boring device. Our plan was to have 2 new crossings. So all telecommunications currently come over the Sagamore and the Bourne. We wanted 2 new and diverse crossings. Again, the more there are, the different they are, the more likely something's going to survive in a big storm. But we found the cost and the timeline prohibitive in getting through the directional bore. So we're going to go on the Sagamore Bridge and over the railroad bridge. We've submitted applications to the Army Corps. The railroad bridge down by the Mass Maritime Academy. So we'll add 1 new crossing to the canal. And the other one is the Taunton River, which we're working on now. The microwave construction will begin in April. We have to get leases from the water tower owners and other communications tower owners. That's a long process as well. We're still a private company. We have to go through a 30B process to get access to those towers. We're in the process of doing those requirements to get access. And the whole system has to be done, and our grant runs out on January 31st of 2013. Currently, we think we'll make that deadline. And a couple of things can really harm us, though, and have already. A Verizon strike recently, Hurricane Irene, and the recent nor'easter. Not that we had a huge impact here, but what it does is take the utilities away from working on our project. For one storm, it can take them away for 3 weeks to a month with all their mutual aid requirements. So that's, if we have any more storms, it's going to hurt us. I wanted to talk to you mostly about government information services as a component of what Open Cape can and will do. There's an economic development piece to this that's big as well, but I wanted to speak to you about this because I think it's probably most important to you at this point. The existing model of government information services on the Cape is it's within towns, within departments. All towns are not necessarily the same, though. Some have fiber optic networks. Some have wireless networks. Some have really not substantial networks at all. They're going to use our fiber to build those networks, and we allow that to happen. Some of them can provide to their communities online services that others don't have the capacity because of their size to do. And basically the services are dispersed within the communities in the departments. The school department runs its own network in a lot of cases. The town runs its own network. The public safety people have their own connectivity. It's all divided up, but there's really no need for that. One physical fiber optic infrastructure can deal with all of that. There's cost to having it that way. You lack the economy of scale that you get by doing things together in these kinds of services. There's little or no aggregation, so every individual department could be buying its own phone service, could be providing for its own PBX telephone system, could be providing for its own internet connection. All of this is costly when we can aggregate for the whole region. And these are isolated networks. They're not connected to one another, so therefore they can't interact and do things together. And they require multiple support staffs. This isn't true in all towns, but it can be true. So we propose a regional umbrella services system. And I'm going to go through describing that for you and then probably ask you for a little bit of help at the end. Open Cape is building a municipal regional area network as part of its network. We have about 3 to 5 buildings that we're going to connect in each town. There's typically a library, a school. We actually chose them because they're regional shelters, and the hub of the town. And that could be the town hall or a public safety building. We're going to connect to all of those buildings at 1 gigabit per second in every town, and they're going to ride on a 10 gigabit per second circuit. And connecting all of the 15 towns together into a common network that terminates right here on this campus up in our new co-location center. So that's going to include a 1 gigabit per second internet connection for all of them to share. So rather than having 50 or 100 different connections across the Cape at all of these public buildings, you would share a common gigabit per second internet connection. Again, you're aggregating to reduce the cost and improve the capacities. The co-location center will have 100 square feet dedicated at no cost for public entities. We're going to buy the initial hardware. It's called a Virtual Machine Storage Area Network, a VM-SAN, and that will be the initial hardware to support common applications among the communities here on the Cape. The 3rd floor of the building is being renovated as well, and it's envisioned to be the Regional Umbrella Service Operations Center. But we think that county commission type folks will be up there. If we have a common application for regional GIS, it might make sense to put the GIS people up there. That's completely up to the county and the commission. We have no stake in that. We're going to renovate the space for their liking, though. And finally, there's a conference room on the first floor. It's not quite as big as this, but it's basically, we've seen here on the campus the lack of conference room space. It's tight to get it. So it's just a common use conference room that can be used throughout the community. I included in your packets the current architectural drawings of this, and it shows you those spaces on there as well. So you can take that home for your own examination. So everyone should have got a copy of that. I won't go through that now, but you can see what the floor plan, it improves the building. We're putting about $3 million into the building. And these are some of the applications we envisioned by using a regional umbrella services model. For the municipal county side, regional GIS, one of the things when we first started looking to see how do we solve the problem, we looked for fiber around the Cape and found that a lot of GIS systems, they're confined to the town and the data ends for the town border. Well, we know that water flows through town boundaries, that transportation links go across town boundaries. We should be looking at all of our infrastructure in a regional model. And you could have a regional GIS system that could be housed at that co-location center that's accessible to all of the communities throughout the Cape. E-permitting, licensing, Yarmouth has done a tremendous amount of research on this that's really well done. Ed Sencio has done it on online permitting and licensing and asset management. That can run throughout the whole region as one system. You could have your own identity as a town, but the cost of buying it, typically the licenses associated with these things are population-based, and 250,000 population is a kind of common spot. And so we could almost buy this software for the same price for the whole region as it costs you for one town. And now everybody can use something like that. I think Ed's research indicated that 88% of all activity for permitting and licensing at the window at the town office is what he would describe as express activity. A dog license, a dump sticker, a beach sticker. All that can be done online, and every community should be able to do it, and they will be able to as a regional application. Assessor databases, they can be shared on a regional system. Assessors need to look at the other surrounding communities, things like that. And these are other examples. The school districts, before I left the college, we converted the college, its online learning system, from a proprietary, very expensive system called Blackboard over to a free open source system called Moodle that all of the K-12 districts can also use at no cost. This allows them, again, to share in all these applications. And you can see that there's a library, water districts can share in SCADA, and there's a lot of public safety applications. I've been working very closely with the chiefs of police and fire on building a 700 megahertz mobile public safety system. That's, we use voice now typically for all of our public safety, but really data is where it is at. If you want to look at things like fingerprint reading at the vehicle level and getting an automatic response from CGIS on the warrants for that person, can't happen over a voice. It's got to happen over a digital system. Video in the fire trucks, exchange of technical and medical data between ambulances and to include video with the hospital, that's not possible over the existing systems. But this will allow that to happen. So that's a really big benefit. The financial aspects of this, we're paying obviously all the capital costs associated with this. The development costs, we've been meeting, myself, and I work very closely, if you don't know, we actually have a small office in the commission building, but they've been loaning us till the building is renovated. But we work very closely with Paul Nidzwiecki in the county on these issues. And when you look at the development costs, how do you implement something like this? There's a cost associated with that. So we've been working, the EDC is working up potentially an RFP to examine and study each town's what kind of applications do they have, what kind of network do they have, what are the costs associated with that. That's really needed because that data is not accessible at the current time. We've gone up and met with the Secretary of Economic Development, Housing and Economic Development, Secretary Bielecki, and requesting of them funding to support the implementation of a regional umbrella services model for applications in our region. So that's the development costs. There are operating costs. We have ideas on this, how it might work. A county enterprise account seems to be a good model. How do you pay for that? Because there are operating costs associated with these applications. Is it a county expense? Is it an assessment of some sort shared? Can E-rate, which the schools and libraries are eligible for, offset those costs? All that needs to be decided, and that's part of the discussion now, and I'd ask your engagement on it. Open Cape eventually would become an operating company rather than a building company, right, for this network. And we ultimately will have operating costs we have to pay, but if we have revenues in excess of our operating costs as a nonprofit and our charitable purpose being to reduce the burden of government, we'll want to decide what do we do with that excess. One, we have to have a reserve. If we ever had the big hurricane, we'd need to rebuild and things like that. But other things we can do are assist with the application upfront expenses. There may be network extensions, for example, Mashpee and Sandwich, Harwich, and I think Dennis and Yarmouth have approached me about extending our network to areas where we didn't necessarily cover. Maybe we fund that and get additional granting for it, or we can subsidize the operating costs. It may be that if Open Cape is doing well in 7 or 8 years, that it might subsidize. And Teresa, we've talked for many years, when Teresa was on the board of Open Cape, Teresa Martin, we talked for many years about how would we deal with that, and ultimately our goal would be to reduce the operating costs for other communities, and I'm talking municipal, schools, public safety, and libraries to zero in time. Governance is a big issue, and as part of, again, I'd ask your engagement on this. Open Cape does not want to make decisions about what applications run on this network and how it's paid for and who makes decisions about it. It'd want to participate in that, but it doesn't want to make the decisions. We think that the community should do that. We think their governance structure with a policy-making committee of some sort might be made up of the county, the commission, Open Cape, CLAMS, and a member from each town to decide what application is next. Who's going to be responsible for it? Where is the money going to come from? All those questions that have to be decided. So we're looking to develop that governance structure, and I think it will be some kind of a committee like that that decides these things. And we'd want your engagement and suggestions on that as well. And these are the kinds of things, like I said, that they'd be talking about. And that's all I had to present to you today. I wanted to just bring you up to date on where we are and take any of your questions that I might be able to answer for you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for speaker? Okay. Yes, Spiro.
Do you envision extending the network to make it available to small businesses and, as a separate question, to residents?
Open Cape currently doesn't have that plan. We're sort of Open Cape as a wholesale product, the backbone on the highways. Think of it as the highways and water mains rather than the off-ramps and side streets. But we think that other companies will come and offer those services. The part of the reason that they haven't entered the marketplace here is because of the huge capital expense would have involved to build the backhaul to get to the internet at a reasonable cost. Now they can just get that on a prorated amount that they need. So we've had interest, for example, from a company that's interested in putting a wireless mesh system over Provincetown. Another company that's interested in offering a point-to-multipoint wireless internet system on the Outer Cape, where there's a lot of folks out there that don't get service. And some other companies that have shown interest. So they can do that because now they don't have to make that huge capital investment. They can start with any number of customers, get the internet levels that they need, the capacity, and then as they grow, they just pay for more. So I think there will be that effect, but as far as us building a FiOS type system, no, that's not in the plans.
Okay, Paul?
I was interested to hear you describe the governance structure, which was one of the things that was addressed in the report that we saw. And I'm just wondering if you have a process or a timeline, you know, that by which you expect that to take place, or how it's going to proceed, because I think what you were describing sounded like a very good plan.
Yes. Well, we've been talking with different folks about this to develop the concept of, okay, what would the governance model be? And we're reaching out more and more to groups like this to say, okay, you need to have a say in this. And we're looking for your feedback on it because ultimately the commissioners and you all will decide what that model will be. And we do intend that would be a government-dominated body, the public entities who are going to use this. They should be making the decisions. And the same thing is true on the public safety side, so the 700 megahertz system. The chiefs and chiefs of police and fire and EMS, they have a committee called the 700 megahertz committee. It's sort of spawned out of the emergency planning committee. And they are making the decisions there. We're only supporting them, even though we're going to carry all their traffic for them. We're funding their initial radio set. They're making that decision, and properly so. So we want to have a government entity, and I'd say we're 60% of the way there. Now we need to have decisions made by folks.
So if I could just...
Yeah, go ahead.
if I understand that this is supposed to be up and running hopefully January, February 2013, do you envision that this governing structure would be in place?
Yes.
By that time? Good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, because we're a private company, again, 30B applies, so there's going to have to be an RFP process even for, that we have to respond to. This is one of my pet peeves is the public-private partnership. Even though we're working to a common end, we've always been a community-based organization, we still as a private company have to respond like any other vendor. So the county will ultimately issue some type of an RFP for this municipal services that we're offering, and we'll probably respond. Now others could respond, I don't know if they can, but others could. And then ultimately, that's at that point, I'm hoping that this sort of thing will be decided. So let's say 6 months from now.
Okay. Yes, Julia, and then Tom.
How does this compare to, say, an area in the Boston area? Do they not need this open Cape type of setup because they have so much
Yes.
private stuff?
That's correct. The density of businesses there results in 5, 6, 7 companies that you could go to for competitive pricing on these types of services. That was not the case here. This will change all of that. And so, I mean, one of our sayings has always been that you can live and work in Truro and have the same kind of capacity at a competitive price as you would in downtown Boston.
And so this is the government agencies, like their library system or their municipal systems, are running with private situations because they could get a decent deal on it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Tom?
So do you have to get a license on all these polls that you're going to?
Correct.
And that costs money?
Correct.
So in your business plan, can you just give me an idea if you're a public library or a school, what it might cost you or cost a public entity to hook up?
Sure. So we're trying to get away from individual libraries paying a fee, or individual schools or town buildings, right? So the municipal regional area network is considered to be a common system that is one price for everyone. So that gigabit per second network, they're all riding on. Now, it isn't restricted to just the buildings we connect to. If your town has a broader wide area network that connects other buildings, they can ride on our network too. So you can now consolidate them all onto a common internet access at least, and shared applications here. We don't have an exact price on what this will be, the operating cost for that, but I'm going to guess that it's going to be somewhere, and don't hold me to this, please, but somewhere in the $200,000 a year shared cost across the community. But that covers schools, libraries, police, and fire, towns, which all are now paying individual prices for those types of services.
So many of us are in the process of developing our budgets for 2013, FY13, from June through or July through June of 2013. So when will they have numbers that they may want to put into their budget if they choose to avail themselves of the service?
Yeah, I'd say we'll have that before the end of the year, or just after the end of the year. Those prices will be set.
This year?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Dick.
Just an off-the-wall question. How many fibers are we talking about?
So it's generally it's
The main
100.
trunk line is what?
Typically 144 strands. In some places, though, where, for example, connecting 6A to 28 across 132, it's 288. At the canal, it's 288. Out on the Outer Cape, it's 96. That sort of thing. So the capacity is pretty much infinite with this.
All right. How about the once you get over the bridge and you go to Providence and Brockton? On those two trunks, what are they?
144.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for you. How would you describe your relationship with Barnstable County? I mean, obviously, we're going to provide you with a site, I guess. Is that how it is? I mean, how would you characterize? And for instance, when you filed an application for those ARA funds, did you do that solely as a open Cape without any attachments to anybody else, or did you do it in concert with Barnstable County, or how is it?
Sure.
What's the relationship?
So we did make the application as the nonprofit, but we've had a long-standing relationship and conversation with the county, and the county has been very supportive with us. We signed, we signed a partnership agreement with the county commissioners. I want to say before we applied for our grant.
Okay.
To work towards this common purpose. And then, and we included the county's donation of the building, the 25-year lease of the building,
Yeah.
as part of the match for our grant, and then they valued that at $750,000. So the relationship with the county has been very good. It's been going on for longer than we've received the grant. We looked at this as a common effort.
How did you initially set up the governing structure of this? I mean, obviously, when you have as we discussed, a future governing structure is going to include a lot of municipal entities and so on, but how is it operated now?
Right now, the Board of Directors is, again, representative of our region.
All right, so the Board of Directors were included in the original application. They were named in the
Well, the corporation applied as the corporation with its existing board structure, yes.
Okay. I'm a Luddite when it comes to technology, so I have no idea what any of this is going on. I turn on my computer and I do whatever I do, but is this so when you cite that 200,000 figure, what is that? Is that the money you're going to have to collect for operating expenses? Is that per town? I mean, how
Yes,
does that work?
that's for the total region.
The total region.
So if you used, for example, if you used the model of the, you currently have an assessment model that's based on population, I think, not that that would be the model. Again, this is where I want folks to help in this decision. If you broke that out, let's say Truro, I think, under that would be like less than $4,000 a year, I think.
Okay, that's not bad.
So that's an example I can think of off the top of my head.
But the MBL is also going to use this in other institutions, at Cape Cod Community College, is that
Yes.
all going to be tied? So they'll be part of the net?
Not this network, no, this is strictly for the municipalities. They will ride on their own networks.
Okay, they're not
Yep,
riding their own.
they're separate networks,
And is that going to be part of Open Cape?
yes.
Okay, so they'll be you'll have a different deal for them?
Totally different for them, yes.
And that will be funded individually as a contractual relationship?
That's
with
correct, yes. And that's true with private entities, too. I mean, there will be, for example, the first customer is going to be Otis Air Force Base.
Yeah.
One of the reasons the base is on blacklist is because it doesn't have the infrastructure to connect to the broader Department of Defense. And as you know, there's an intelligence wing there now, the 102nd, not an F-15 wing, and they need to be connected fully, and so they will be our first customer.
I laugh because I know someone who works at the base, and they have security concerns as far as their network goes. So it's what goes, you can send stuff in, but you necessarily can't send stuff out.
Well, that's why they want our network. They're so happy that we are building this because it solves their problem.
Okay.
They can have their own private, dedicated wavelength of light on our fiber.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, Marcia?
I'm just a little confused on a couple of things. Cape Net is going to pay you $500,000 a year,
Correct.
and when the center is built, whoever that contractor is going to pay you $50,000. Plus, also, by the way, Cape Net is going to pay you 6% of their revenues a year.
Yeah.
So Open Cape is going to get $550,000 at the floor per year.
Well, I would say one correction is that we put an RFP out to get someone to operate that center with that $50,000 payment, and no one responded. We're not going to probably make money on that.
Okay.
So the $500,000 is the floor.
Okay, so plus 6%.
Correct.
So what I don't understand then is if that's the fees that you're getting, I guess I have a bunch of questions. What are you spending that on?
What are we going to?
Yeah, $500,000.
You know, one of the misconceptions is that we're going to get rich as the IG report. I worry about making our payments in the first 5 years, and I'll tell you what some of those costs are. We philosophically, part of our effort was the community should own the infrastructure and make decisions in it. When companies like a Verizon or others make decisions about FiOS or anything else, you have no say in that. We don't think that's the way it should be for the future for our community. We think we should have a say in it. So Open Cape, representing the community, granted as a private company, is the owner of all of the assets. We also are obligated to pay for all the rights that come along with that. The poles, for example, you have to pay. We're on 12,000 poles. You have to pay the utilities to stay on those poles every year. You want to be in a Verizon central office for regeneration, you have to pay for that, right? And so I can tell you that in our first year, I can estimate our operating costs are in excess of $800,000. Just to pay those things. I have to have surety bonds in order to protect the utilities for their poles if we ever went bankrupt. There are a ton of expenses that we have to pay related to operational. Again, we're just owning the underlying rights to this. We're not maintaining it and selling to customers. That falls to Cape Net.
Okay, so And I'm reading here that you have the idea of setting up an enterprise account and then charging back to the towns for this. But then is Cape Net going to be charging the towns also?
No.
Where does Cape Net generate their revenue, of which they will pay you $500,000 plus 6%?
They will, that $200,000 payment, again, don't hold me to that amount of money.
$500,000, not $200,000.
No, well, the $200,000 that would be paid for the municipal regional area network services and an internet connection would be paid to Cape Net, and Open Cape would benefit on the 6% of that. They are a private company that is going to sell these services. So not just for this is frankly a small part of what they would be selling. They'll be selling services to cell tower companies. They'll be selling services to Cape Cod Community College, I'm sure, and private businesses in Fall River. And the more they can get, the better off all of us will be, because that will make them successful. One of the biggest challenges in getting the grant was convincing the federal government that we could make a sustainable enterprise out of this. And they were concerned, as with all the grants. We had to convince them that, listen, in the long term, we're not going to be going back to the government and asking for money. We're going to be able to make a sustainable enterprise. And the model that we chose to do that is a private, for-profit company selling services and paying us for the right to sell a portion of our owned equipment.
Yeah. Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question. Two questions, really. One was, you mentioned that you had to have performance bonds to pay the utilities in case you went bankrupt. And can you just explain that to me? Like,
sure.
What are you protecting them from?
If you get what's called a master agreement from the utility owners of the poles, and they're typically jointly owned by the power company and Verizon, they will make you put up a bond that is enough for them to remove your equipment if for any reason you've failed. That's what the bonds are for. So you have to have that bond in place so that, again, if we went bankrupt or for any other reason, we failed to pay our fees, they could remove our equipment, and that's what the bond is used for.
Okay. Can you also explain to me on the operating cost end of it? I think I saw that there needed to be an intermunicipal agreement among all the towns. Is that correct?
Well, that's possible.
Does that mean you have to? And you were saying that you got to have everything in place by 2013 or whatever.
Right.
Does that mean all the towns have to sign an agreement and have a town meeting vote in order for this to?
Right. I mean, the model that's chosen, this is, again, this whole governance thing, what do we want it to be and what should it be? And depending on which direction is taken on that, there may be that need for that sort of thing. I'm not sure, but the model has to be defined first. That's one model that would there's one model that would require that, an intermunicipal agreement.
Okay. Teresa?
I was going to ask you to clarify, Dan, because I think it might be a little bit confusing. When you're talking about the governance, Open Cape, the entity, remains Open Cape, the entity, a nonprofit with a nonprofit board.
Mm-hmm.
Cape Net is the operator that runs this. The regional umbrella services system you're talking about is a third thing, which is building out a specific network, and it itself also has its own governing board, and that's the governance structure you're talking about trying to figure out. Is that, so there's three entities we're talking about when you start to talk about the regional umbrella services system.
That's correct. With those regional umbrella services, the network that it's riding on, the applications, the e-permitting, that really needs to fall to that governance body, which is all government. That would be all government entities. Okay. Municipal government entities.
Let me just follow up on that for a minute. I'm trying to work my way through this slowly. You're going to aggregate the towns and so on, and the municipal entities are going to be essentially a customer of Cape Net.
Correct.
And that's going to sweeten the pot, because when they go in there, they're going to, besides all the people they're going to sign up, they're already going to have this source of income from the towns. So how do you determine? In other words, since you're going out with a contract, I assume, going out with the contract to Cape Net, I mean, I don't know if there's more, if you're not, or you're just picking somebody, but I mean, how do you determine how much you have to throw in, how much the municipal side of it has to throw in order to be attractive? In other words, why not 300,000? Why not 100,000? Right. Where does the number come from?
The number comes from what is the cost to maintain the system and operate it. And that's it. They're not making any money on the municipal regional area network. That's not where their interest lies. Right. So they're going to.
But in order to have them named as the contractor, they have to do this. So it's conceivable they could take a loss on it, saying, because in order to, have the ability to sign up private customers and MBL and so on. So I'm determined.
Well, they don't need, again, the distinction here is that the municipal services network, right? The umbrella, that's riding on top of all the rest of the network.
Yeah.
So they don't need to have this to make the other stuff work.
Right.
So they're going to be able to offer services to customers, businesses, and institutions, whether or not there's a municipal regional area network.
I understand that.
They don't have to do that.
But well, I guess my point is that there is going to be that network, and it is going to be part of their income stream.
Yes.
All right. So, am I making any sense?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker?
Maybe not. Okay, Julia, help me out here.
Well, I guess my last networking experience in government was when the county introduced the concept of 911 services for municipalities, and it was going to be at a tremendous savings to the towns, and most of them didn't sign up for it because of, as far as I could see, sort of turf issues. Are we worried about that, or is that just so different now, or is there some reason to think that towns are going to leap on this, like probably they should, but they didn't when they had the chance in the past?
I think that when you have an application running on the network that's available to communities, take the e-permitting and licensing, for example, the case is going to be so compelling for the community that they're going to want to participate in that. It's a great service. It saves you tons of time and money. It delivers a much better service to your community. And so I think that's going to be a compelling case for a community to say, listen, we want to ride on this and we want to participate in it. And that's the way I think that it will go. But there's no twisting of anybody's arm to do this. It's going to be largely, this is available, and every community can choose to participate or not.
Tom?
Speaker confused me a little bit, but I'm just trying to, on the structure side of it, Open Cape owns everything?
Correct.
So you're that's the nonprofit.
That's correct.
And you've contracted with CapeNet, and they can run with this as much as they want in terms of selling and all, and
that's right.
And that helps you because they pay money to you for all of that.
That's correct.
And then this is, as Teresa's described, is the third leg of the third party we're talking about here. But you're really you're calling the shots on this as it relates to CapeNet and to the establishment of the governance body.
That's correct. So in CapeNet's case, we license them to operate and sell only 60% of the network. We hold 40% in reserve, frankly, to hold it over their heads to make sure they do a good job. But the purpose of having them, and again, this is in order to win the grant, we had to come up with something that was attractive to the federal government. And we said, listen, our model is we're going to get a private for-profit company to go out there and do what it does well. We're not going to refabricate all of this and do it ourselves. We're going to use a private company to get them to sell as much of this as they can and make profit. They're going to pay us a fee for that. We, in turn, are turning that fee back into the community. Mm-hmm. And that's where we have to pay our operating costs first. Revenues in excess of operating costs will go to reserves, and frankly, whatever that governing body for the public side says, it could be one of three things I can think of: subsidizing the application deployment, expanding the network where communities think that's the most important thing, or subsidizing that operating cost. And that'll be a decision that we'll look to that governing board to say, this is what we think you should do this year, once we start making revenues in excess of operating costs.
So if I'm just an individual who's operating a business out of my home, I can sign up with CapeNet?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
And how do you oversee them? What sort of, do you have in your contract with them, are there benchmarks they have to meet in terms of, what they're selling or what their productivity is in order to keep them on?
Well, they have to pay us $500,000 whether they make a dollar or not. So they have money in the game here. They've also put $2 million up as part of the match and other things. So they have an incentive to sell, and that's what they want to do. So they want to make as much money as they can. And part of the reason we chose them is there's a potential for them to invest another $20 million over the next 10 years to get cell towers fiber optics. And that's a good thing for our community. Part of the reason you don't get cell connection or you drop your cell connection is not because you're not near the tower. It's because there's a copper wire going to the cell tower. And as people use 3G and 4G video, there's not enough capacity at the tower. And we're intending to go to every tower in the whole region in order to change that so that it really works for you. And if you're a business, this is a critical service now for you. Power reliability is another one. We have another relationship with NSTAR that we're giving them some fiber, and they're aiding us with getting our fiber deployed for them to deploy smart grid on Cape Cod to improve power reliability. In that case, they use our fiber to connect to all their switching devices on the Cape. And they say that when that's done, they'll have power outages to no more than 100 houses from a single event, because they can reroute the power, they know where the damage is immediately, those kinds of things. So there's all sorts of those secondary benefits that are going to accrue to the community, both for businesses and for public entities. And on the I want to mention the microwave, for example. There's no commercial traffic on there. It's strictly for public safety people. The 700 megahertz system is strictly for public safety people. Open Cape and CapeNet make nothing out of that, but are maintaining it at no cost. There's all sorts of public benefits to this. And that was the model that we devised. Try to turn the whole infrastructure around, but have a model where the community had a say in it, and the community could benefit if it was successful.
Yeah, sure, Deborah.
I didn't understand exactly where all of this is written down. Is this in your bylaws, or is it?
Yes, well, it's in our bylaws, it's in our articles of organization, it's in our policies and procedures that we have for the company. It's in a lot of contracts. So, for example, that we'll continue to do this and act in this way. The federal, even though we own all the assets, the federal government has a security interest attached to everything. That if we can't sell it, the federal government has an interest.
Right.
The state government gave us $5 million as part of the match, and we have a contract with them that also gives them certain rights in addition to some of the assets. So there are a number of mechanisms in here that ensure that there's never a guarantee in life, but the intention of everybody who's ever been involved in this is clear. To do something for their community, and all the contractual obligations require that.
Well, sometimes it's been said that you can go. Good intentions may lead you in the wrong direction. The Office of the Inspector General did this whole report, and you wrote a very thoughtful reply to it. I noticed that you didn't address, accept, or reject the specific recommendations for bylaws.
That's correct.
That were made by the Inspector General. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. So what we did with their report, and again, that was a report that they were writing on all ARA stimulus money projects in the state, and that was their closeout report on us, where they clearly said we're doing everything right, but they had these concerns about the future and made some recommendations, some of them specific to our bylaws. So our board has taken that report that they have. I've looked at the specific recommendations they have, and our governance committee is, in conjunction with the full board, evaluating each one of them. And we'll decide if they apply and if they would be in the best interests of our company and our community. But that's part of a bigger process, I would describe it as. We didn't want to say, yes, let's take that one, yes, let's take this one. We've been going through a process for the past 6 months to define our operating status. We're largely a construction company at this point. We got the grant, we're building the network, and then when we convert to become an operating company, it's going to be a different type of company. The employees may not be the same skills that you need. So our board is going through a total evaluation. We're going to have to deal with our operating costs. How are we going to pay for those things? So we're going through a full comprehensive evaluation of where we will be in 2013, and all of those recommendations that they have are part of that consideration. So we're not saying, yes, we'll take this one, we'll take that one, but we're considering every one of them and may well take several of them, but as part of a larger process.
Julia.
How did your board get constituted originally, and how does it replace itself or change, or
sure.
Who's picking the board?
Okay, so our board started off as a steering committee in 2006, and Teresa was there when we first said, let's get something done about this. We called for a meeting at Cape Cod Community College, said, if you think this is a problem for you and your business or yourself, come and talk about it. 100 people showed up. And we said, wow, there is a real problem. Let's deal with it. And Teresa actually said at that meeting, if you're here to complain, you're in the wrong room. If you're here to do something about it, you're in the right place. And so we formed a steering committee from that group, ultimately incorporated as the nonprofit. The board was the steering committee, which was really just interested parties who had, myself, I was the CIO of Cape Cod Community College. Teresa was at that time with the Cape Cod Tech Council. Gary Delius was the MIS director of Truro. Art Gaylord was the IT director of the Woods Hole Oceanograph, and several others like that. And that's what the board still is consisted of. Now we've begun to expand the board because as time progresses, your needs for talent and knowledge change. So the folks who constituted it aren't necessarily the folks we may need in 5 years. And we're transitioning now to see that. Do we need this? Do we need more of someone with a financial business development background? So we're going through that now. And the board decides who the new board members will be. It's done through a governance committee process. If there's an expressed interest from someone, they interview that person, have meetings with them, and then ultimately the governance committee makes a recommendation to the full board for that person.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question because I'm familiar with the example of boards that appoint themselves, you know, and for instance, if you were a regular corporation, you'd be run by stockholders, you know. So I guess the question is that, and I'm not being suspicious or anything, but just to see how we've had many discussions how these similar organizations work, and if you're putting out a contract, for instance, with Cape Net or something, right? I mean, a public entity would be under the contract, the laws of the contracts, the state of Massachusetts. You have to put it out, you have to advertise it and so on. You have to choose the lowest bidder or the best bidder according to certain criteria. But if I'm hearing correctly, you can pick anybody you want.
No, that's not true.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
No, we are required under our grant to follow those same, and I think the IG's report stated this, not only are we following what's required of the grant, we've gone above and beyond to follow Massachusetts law as well.
Okay.
So we used an RFP to choose our bank. It's all on our website too. We put every one of them up there for anybody to see. We used a competitive process for every decision that we made. And in addition, on that big contract, the state insisted on participating in the review of the contract.
Yeah.
So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, through the what's the Information Technology Department and their legal counsel, reviewed all those contracts as well because they have an interest in this.
Yeah.
So we do use a competitive process. We're required to do it as part of our grant, and we've gone above and beyond that requirement.
All right. My only concern is that ultimately this is going to affect all those private companies like Tom talked about that are going to be able to access this. In other words, Cape Net's going to come in, and this is going to be and of course, their only recourse to being charged excessive amounts is the fact that you're going to vet the contract. You're going to look at it and say. No,
well, I'd say the marketplace is going to define what those.
So there's competition here. They
Absolutely.
don't have to go with it.
In fact, because I don't want to bore you with too much detail on this, but for example, in the contract we have with Cape Net, we allow them to sell 60% of the fiber optics, right? That breaks down further, though, and it says they can only, there's two types of fiber optics. There's dark fiber, which a private company can light itself, and there's lit fiber, which is a service. I want 10 megabits, I want 100 megabits per second to my business, right? They can only sell as lit service of theirs 35% of that 60%. Okay? The remainder is available to competitive companies, to include Comcast and Verizon. We insist upon this. We, as the representatives of the community, are not interested in having a monopoly on Cape Cod. We want a competitive marketplace, and we want that to be available to any company that can pay the freight and wants to use it. So, for example, if Comcast didn't want to expend their capital to build new plant on the Outer Cape to improve their services, they could lease our dark fiber, and Cape Net would have to sell it to them. They have no way out of that. It's a requirement. So where we're interested in creating a competitive marketplace where prices go down, and you're definitely going to, in fact, I would say you're seeing that now. The things that I wanted to have for the college in 2005 that were not available to me suddenly are available at a much more reasonable price. The competitive marketplace is going to rule here, and that's where the pricing is going to come.
Good.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
One more question?
Sure.
To follow up on Representative, Tom Lynch's question about the municipal network. The system-wide expense is anticipated to be about $200,000. Using your math, Truro's paying for, Barnstable's probably paying around $80,000.
No, it actually comes out to be about 30,000, I think.
30?
For Barnstable.
Well, that is replacing some other expense that Barnstable is paying now. So I won't put Tom on the spot since he's supposed to know this number. What do you think that number is, and how much is Barnstable saving by having this network available?
Part of my problem is defining what that is, because we've made inquiry to the towns about this, and it's not a number that's readily available. Because, and this is, you know, not someone trying to hide it or deceive anybody. Typically, these costs are in several different department budgets, and no one really knows the number. One of the things we're hoping that the EDC is going to do is fund someone going to all those towns and finding out what those costs really are. So that when we say to you, listen, it's going to cost you $28,000 or $29,000 in Barnstable, you say, wow, is this an improvement? And it's only going to get better over time. Suppose, for example, that you run your phone system over it. Now, if you right now have, and there's one town that has 28 PBXs, separate phone systems, that's going to be a big difference. And you can just basically, we could have a regional phone system where every public phone is an extension away from every other one. You don't have to have a long distance charge to call, you know, from Truro to Bourne. That's all possible once we get going with this.
Right. And you're also undertaking the expense of bringing fiber to the door.
For the 3 to 5 that we're doing, we're paying for all that, yes.
Okay. I mean, there's significant cost savings here to each municipality by jumping on this network.
And we're also putting in all the actual equipment, the switches and routers in the building. We're paying for all that.
At no cost.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm not sure. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And again, I mean that I would love to have your input on this. I gave you a copy pretty much of what I presented to you as a document. I would love to have your feedback on that. Thank you.
Moving right along here. Do we have any communications from members of the public? Oh, yes, we're both. I guess this meeting is being recorded. Yes, Mary Lou.
I guess this is the way I can ask a question on what just happened.
You need to use the microphone with,
Yeah, yeah.
is identify yourself for the record.
I said, I guess this is the way I can ask a question, perhaps from the public's point of view. Okay. This is the way I can ask a question for the public's point of view, which I thought might be asked by the Assembly. And if any of you were at the Smarter Cape Cod conference, where the Open Cape, which was a really excellent conference with which Teresa coordinated, some of these issues came up at the time. And one that I was particularly interested in, we're going through a technological revolution, which, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution and try to see what the impacts of these kinds of revolutions are, what is the impact for job development from Open Cape? You hear all the time, well, this is going to help us, as the Industrial Revolution had, in one of the major problems we have today, which is job development. And I think what I've been reading in the New York Times and other magazines is that the technological revolution may not have that much of an impact on helping us improve our job situation here on the Cape or nationally or internationally, because it's usually one person in a home. I'm just wondering how, it isn't a matter of giving somebody a computer, it's how do you develop more jobs in the marketplace because you are better technologically prepared to do so.
Care to answer that? Go right ahead.
Obviously, my focus was on the public side here, but there's a big economic component. Excellent question, by the way. Thank you very much. So there's no way for me to calculate how many jobs will be created, right? So we have some construction jobs we know that are going to happen. I think we estimated that at 200. Someone has to manufacture the fiber in North Carolina. There's a job for them. Someone's going to maintain this, obviously, and operate this. So there's jobs there specifically related to Open Cape. But you're more interested in, as you express, what are the secondary effects on general economic development? And I think one of the reasons we've all been involved in this for some time is to see the year-round economy of Cape Cod expand and diversify. And I think we all know that in the information age, that the ideas and the production and the customers are all throughout the world. You can have the idea and generate the product on Cape Cod, have it produced in Panama, and shipped to a customer in Europe. So it's about ideas and access and the ability to move data and information around that helps to move your economy. So, and at the smallest level that might be, and we've had interest from this, a radiologist who has a second home on Cape Cod who wants to live here year-round, but must have this kind of connectivity to transfer x-rays back and forth digitally between the hospitals that he does services for, those kinds of things. Video in particular, those kinds of applications, which are increasingly what we see. That I think I read just recently that 80% of the traffic on the internet for Comcast and Verizon is video at this point. It's all about those kinds of, and the kids who are growing up today, they don't read like we did. It's all about video, the visual display. That's where the marketplace is for the future, the development of products. And we have, as I often say on the Cape, you know, a culture of creativity and entrepreneurship. A lot of folks that I know and encounter here who can develop ideas that can become products that are sold on, you know, through the internet type activity. That's what we want to have. We want those people to have those ideas. And you look at a company like Back Office as a good example in Harwich, $300 million company created on Cape Cod, headquartered here, a worldwide business. That's the kind of thing we want to see develop here and can develop here, either by people who live here now having those ideas, or people who come here as secondary visitors and second homeowners who want to stay more time here. And there's a lot of examples of folks like that. I'm one of them. That have moved here and will probably be actively involved in economic development of new businesses in this region. And that's where the economic impact is going to come from.
Yeah, I hear you, Sheila. You're going to have to use the microphone, sorry.
Hi, everyone. I just want to give an example that occurred, that happened to me. Actually, there were two examples over the summertime. Two sets of friends. One is a mathematician who is a global mathematician. I'm talking, you know, proof. You know what I'm saying? Very competitive in the science world, developing theorems and whatever it is they do that helps us, I'm not sure. But I understand that less than I do technology. However, he said to me, he lives in Chappaqua, New York, and he said, look, I have a problem here. At home, we have Vios. I can communicate with 3 colleagues, send information instantly around the world as we're doing our work. I can't do it here. And I said, oh, we're going to be having Open Cape, and that is going to give us that broadband capacity. He understood exactly what I was talking about. He understood that this was, because he said, there's going to be a day I'm going to want to live here, and I won't be able to live here if we don't have this. The other was a journalist who works for the New York Times, who wants to spend most of his time here, but able to do his reports back. But he needs access to feeds from all over the world. Isn't able to do it, and not able to send information back. So these are just opportunities from infrastructure. By providing the infrastructure, economic development possibilities can occur, and this is really the secondary benefit, as opposed in addition to the public benefit. Thank you.
I answered your question adequately, ma'am.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'm going to leave my stuff here because I have to do the 6:30 too.
Okay, yeah, I'll be here for that too. Do you have any other questions from members of the public? Hearing none, the Assembly will now convene, and we'll begin with the discussion and report on the activities of the Special Commissions on County Governments. And since I don't want to do all the talking, I'll let Julia or someone else know.
Well, I was not able to come to the meeting on the 10th.
Which is the last one we had.
Which is the last one.
Okay, I was there. And I've been trying to think now exactly
the
what.
The Lieutenant Governor.
The Lieutenant Governor came, yes, and he talked about the support for local organizations and so on, and he also talked about, he more or less saw it as a discussion on regionalization. He started out with regionalization, he ended with regionalization, and the administration supports that. I asked him, and of course, we also had a big discussion on wastewater. He was put on the spot as to what the state could do for us. He didn't have any immediate answers. I asked him, I brought up the subject of local option taxes, which is something administration has supported in the past, and I asked him that should it come to that, would the administration support our ability to raise funds, you know? I mean, I don't want to bring up the Cape White tax or anything, I didn't mention that, but I said our ability to raise funds to cover this issue, and he sort of prevaricated, but he said in the end, yes, they would, you know, that it's his feeling that they would. So that was, he gave that short presentation, and then, help me out, someone else was here. Mark Zielinski gave a financial overview. This is before, of the county, which you should all be familiar with by now. It simply dealt with the structure of how we finance it, the various accounts we have, revolving funds and so on, and other organizations which to us are off budget, but are part of the county budget, the EDC and so on. So, John, were you here?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have actually attended that meeting as well, not as a participant, but as an observer. And I thought the most interesting thing that Lieutenant Governor, or as Rob O'Leary called him, governor, because he was the one, by definition, he is the governor when he's the only one present and the governor is not. So I thought I learned something about governance there myself. They have a competitive grant situation that was introduced to each and every town starting November 7th, and it's due, I think, on January 15th. And it's very important that everybody in the town, everybody in this audience goes back to their town and lets them know to go to mass.gov/ANF, and there's a link to this competitive grant situation. There's up to $4 million that the towns can do. I brought it back to my town, and they're very interested in doing it, and I think that every town represented here, I think everybody but Brewster is represented today, goes back to their town administrator and make sure that they got that information and they're willing to act on it. They're talking about sub-regionalization, total regionalization, but they're looking for outside-the-box activities. I suggested to my town a second dredge.
He also mentioned under questioning that the county was not designated as a participant in this. However, regional planning agencies are. So the Cape Cod Commission, if they want, which has, I understand, in the economic development as part of their comprehensive plan, could apply for a grant under this program. So I'm glad you mentioned that, John.
And you can partner back up to the county as well. But the original grant applicants have to be municipalities, regional planning agencies, and I think libraries.
Yeah. Well, I know that this is much less. This item is on the agenda not simply to give a report on what happened last Thursday, but I know that there was a general discussion ensued on where this committee is headed. And from my own standpoint, first of all, I'd like to say that everyone who's come before the county has had nothing but good things to say about the county governments. They've more or less said, yes, we have, like, for instance, Workforce Investment Board and so on, the wastewater plant. They've all said, yes, we have a good relationship with the county, who thinks they're working. They've been pressed by the chair, either Rob or Senator Rauschenbach, as well, what do you think about the structure? And that has elicited somewhat of an awkward response. They didn't really get, they didn't really comment on that so much as the structure. I guess their comment was, well, it seems to be working, They weren't really, so that's how it is operated so far, although Paul Nizwicki did make some suggestions as to a county structure. He thought that the assembly could be restructured. He also talked about a more powerful administrator, similar to what a situation that exists in Barnstable, where you have a representative body who's appointing an administrator who then in turn runs just about everything, whereas the commissioners have more direct authority now. So he did make some suggestions in that regard as far, and Pat's going to, well, assembly is convened, unfortunately, so we're going to have to ask them to suspend the rules. Could you suspend the rules for Pat?
So moved.
So a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Pat, you're up. I'm glad somebody else is going to comment on this because
this is just a little additional information on what the governor had to say. as he also said, by the way, that when his father is around and people are not sure whether to call him governor, lieutenant governor, mayor, when he was mayor of Worcester, his father said, call him Tim, because all the other titles are temporary. So anyway, I think the other point he made is that these grants are available to municipalities, and municipalities could partner with the county. I mean, there might be a few towns, perhaps, that are interested in the same thing, and they could partner with the county. The other piece is that tomorrow at the Plymouth Public Library at 10 o'clock, there is an informational meeting pardon me, on this grant, how you go about it. Pam Coker, who is with ANF, is kind of leading this whole regional thing. So if anyone's available tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, you'll get all the information on it at Plymouth Public Library. Thanks.
Thank you. I have some water. I don't have any water, otherwise I'd give you some, but. Yes, Julia.
I wonder, is the resource person for the county that works on grants going to go to that meeting so that she could be a resource for towns who get interested in it? I think that would be worthwhile, because then that could be very useful to the town applicants.
Yeah. I don't think the grant, I'm not sure, but correct me if I'm wrong, the grant is not actually for, if people decide to regionalize on wastewater, they can't apply for a grant to pay for the plant. This is more or less to set up the regional organization. It's to set up the structure. Technical assistance, more or less than anything else. So. I don't know where the commission is going. I mean, that seems to be the $24,000 question, which I think we're going to have to answer within the next 1 or 2 meetings. What their findings are going to be. There's 24, 25 of us sitting around the table. There hasn't been a great deal of discussion from the representatives, the members of the commission, as to what they feel, what direction they feel that we should go. So I think that if not this meeting, the meeting next after this, they're going to really sit down and say, what recommendations do we have, if any, and what are those recommendations? And so both Senator former Senator Rauschenbeck and O'Leary have expressed an interest in wrapping this up as soon as possible, so that if they have to submit anything to the Secretary of the Commonwealth, they could do so in time. Yes. We got to suspend the rules for you too, Sheila. Yeah. Do I have a motion to suspend? You may not get as much as Mary Pat. You know, you got to take your chances on your own. Do you want to suspend the rules? Yes. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
This is just to help people get, excuse me, this is just to help you all get the correct information. There are minutes that have been posted on these meetings, and you know, there were a lot of things that were talked about from the Lieutenant Governor in regionalization and the incentives that they're trying to give towns to do regional efforts is there, and that is what the whole $4 million is about. And it's not even just your neighbor, it can be other parts of the state. I mean, so we can partner, and we're actually thinking about this with Lyme disease and that sort of thing. The other thing is that Andrew Gottlieb was also interviewed that day, and he spoke at length about wastewater issues and you know, regional concerns in that area. Also, when they were talking to Paul Niedzwiecki, he was really like, you know, he has a background in government structures. He taught it for 10 years at Suffolk, and he's this sort of thing. So he wasn't giving recommendations, and when it was put to him about increasing the power of the commission and that sort of thing, he said, you know, that's not where I'm going, and that's not what this is about. This is about other things. So he was just observing municipal governments and the structure of this government and how it works. So it wasn't that you were putting it out there as though. So I'm not speaking from, but that information goes out, as I well know, by reading the banner. So I would just like people to be in you know, back at you. But no, but it's information that people should know accurately. But the minutes will be on the county website, and they will be available. And if you need them, I'm sure Kara Mahoney or we can get word to the committee, and they can forward. And they're very precise. They're very, almost as good as yours.
Okay.
Can I ask the
Thank
commissioner
you.
a question?
Yeah, sure. Tom?
Sheila?
Sheila, come back.
I know we spoke initially, that the commission, it's a blue sky approach, and they're looking at a whole lot of other things, so I can understand why Lieutenant Governor might be coming down and stuff. I thought they'd spend some time, and I'm wondering if they're doing it with you folks, looking at what obstacles are there to us not doing some of the things that people thought there was a need to create the commission for. So I know at the legislative, I'm very familiar with what we do here at the legislative end, but we don't operate anything. We don't put into effect, directing someone that does housing or directing someone that does human services to do stuff. That's your job. The executive branch is out there doing that. Are they talking to you about how it works when you have 3 executives running one thing? You have a county administrator, assistant county administrator. Who directs all that? I mean, if there's a staff meeting, do you go to it? Does the if Mark Zielinski thinks that someone should be down at a meeting in Truro because it's an important county issue, can he turn and say, I'd like you to be down to sit in on that particular meeting because that's important to us, and that's how I'd like you to be spending your time? Are those the types of things they're looking at so that they can say, this is how they're operating, it's efficient, or it's not as efficient, so that if someone makes a suggestion like there should be a single county administrator, they've figured out, they've looked at it and said, well, that's maybe because there's confusion with 3 executives, 2 administrators, and department heads who, I don't know whether they meet weekly with you or whether they meet weekly with him, as many of us do in our towns, or not.
Well, we are the executive branch, so the authority does lie with us, whereas in many towns, it has become more professionalized, where it is the executive town administrator that is the check and balance to that power is the Board of Selectmen. So we are the legislative branch, we are the executive branch, you are the legislative branch, and in many ways you're our check and balance. And our job is really policy and guiding the operations at hand on daily policy. Now, we will feel as commissioners, we can put forward, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but we will state that we wish someone to be at a certain place, or we will attend ourselves if there's information that we want to know about in different areas, or if we're requested our attendance.
I just want to get back to the question,
But as far as the special commission is an independent commission that we basically blessed. And if you attend the meetings, the best way to know where they're going is to attend the meeting, because I'm not aware of it, and I think it's evolving. Don't you believe? Don't you see that?
The question that Tom's asking is, have they addressed this? And the answer is no.
No,
they've not had any internal discussions.
I have no idea. I have no idea what they're doing, but you can see that the discussion
Why don't you let I do?
Okay, then
before I recognize anybody else, let me just say.
Yeah, well, she's on the commission.
Yeah, but we've taken testimony. In that testimony, people have made suggestions, and they have addressed these issues.
Right.
But the committee among itself has not discussed it. Mary Lou.
Can I have one more excuse so I can?
I shouldn't have put this on the agenda. I can see it was a mistake.
Mr. Speaker?
I sit on this commission, and I think perhaps it's probably wise to get divergent opinions and then put them together than having it just from one person.
First I need to suspend the rules. All
right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, are we going to suspend the rules?
You don't want to.
For this?
Sorry.
All right. I take that as a motion. Do we have a second? Moved and second. All those in favor say aye. Okay, you're in.
Of course we haven't talked among ourselves yet. We're still hearing from people in the county. And we aren't meeting, we are meeting twice a month. Obviously, that's going to have to increase when we start having exchanges among ourselves. The question that Tom posed with the kind of people that are sitting around that table will obviously be discussed at that time. They are the kinds of questions when you're talking structure and we're talking vision, because both of those came up at the last meeting. Are we working to a vision or are we working to structure? Andy Gottlieb thought we had to do vision. Paul Niedzwiecki said we can do them both. But those questions, we wouldn't be ready. We've had like 3 meetings. Obviously, we're still hearing lots of material, and I would want that before we had any discussion among ourselves. But you can rest assured that we aren't going to be finished in November, as they originally said. In fact, I think we'll be lucky if we're finished in January or February, but we will have in-depth conversation among ourselves.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes. You asked for this.
I don't want to interrupt you. Did you want to?
So here's your chance.
I attended the last meeting, and I understood the chairs to suggest that not in the November 30th meeting, but in the December meetings, it will be taking up the question of the Assembly more directly. So I made it a note to attend the December meetings and to give testimony at those. I was waiting for an answer from Senator Rauschenbach as to whether they need to have us on the agenda individually, or we'll be speaking during an open session. But to all of you, my colleagues at on the Assembly, I would attend those meetings in December.
Okay, I think the what's going to be on the agenda at maybe the 30th is governance. That's the word they're using, is governance. I don't think it's specific to the Assembly. It just has to do with the overall governance of Barnstable County, which obviously we're part of. So I agree that you guys should be there. So I guess this was an opportunity for anybody to weigh in as to how they feel this is going and what direction, give direction to the members. Myself and Julia, both members. Yeah, sure.
I'd like to speak first to the question that Tom asked, and I think it's a real relevant issue. There have been a lot of talk in these meetings, and I've been to all of them and listened to everything that has happened, and there has not been the kind of discussion of substance of how the county operates. There haven't been, nobody has sat up there and said, I criticize this, or I think this doesn't function well, or the legislative body doesn't work, right? The closest you came to that was Paul Niedzwiecki saying that he thought the Board of Commissioners was hamstrung by the open meeting law, and there ought to be just one executive for the county. That was the closest you got. However, my concern is that you sort of expect a hearing process to be, they hear all the testimony and they decide based on the testimony that they hear. I mean, that's sort of how I expect a process like that to work. If that's what's happening, they haven't heard anything that leads to any conclusions about how county governance should be restructured. So now what you're relying upon is whatever opinions, beliefs, whatever this group of people have bring to the table with no foundation in what's been presented to them. I'm concerned about that, and I think one of the things that I urged Ron to put this on the agenda, because I think we ought to talk about in this group about what we think county government how it ought to be structured or restructured, if at all, and then we should come forward with some kind of a position. I think that's incumbent upon us to do that.
Julia, did you?
Yeah, I agree that what we've heard, a lot of which we already knew, but some of it was interesting and I learned some stuff, but there hasn't, I do think that if we do have, as a group, any views on structure or restructure, we probably should present them. I don't think it's realistic to think that it's going to be easy to have that discussion without some pieces of paper on the table. I'm a big person on thinking you gotta you need to put out some paper so that people are talking about the same thing, and then they can either disagree with that or tweak it or reject it. But to have 25 people talk seriously about structure with no paperwork, I think is not good. So if people have some ideas, I suggest they write down some ideas, and we can discuss it. And I did that, and I didn't come up with a final conclusion, but I did lay out what I thought were the issues that we could discuss. So otherwise, I don't know who's going to come up with a piece of paper. I'm assuming someone is, and that they already have it written, but we haven't seen it, and we don't know anything about it. So if we want to be in that mix, we better get on it.
Yeah, Leo?
Thank you for putting this on the agenda, and I think it's important. I would like to hopefully have it on there for the next few meetings, so that in the event when this committee does in fact start discussing things and moving forward, or maybe not moving forward, we'll be able to at least respond. So that's the first comment. The second one is, having served on the Charter Review Committee and kind of looked at that aspect of revamping county government, I do have some suggestions and points that I would like to have openly discussed here amongst us, to find out if anybody feels that they are valid or maybe not valid, or we as a board could either vote to support or not support. I don't know if you're prepared to do that this evening. If no one wants to, that's fine. I'll be happy to try to jot some thoughts down in writing and be able to pass them out if the speaker is going to in fact have this as kind of a continuing area of discussion on our agenda. Because if you're not going to do that, then I will bring up some things this evening. But if I can feel assured that we're going to be having this opportunity, I mean, last week it wasn't on the agenda, and there must have been 6 or 7 members here that went into kind of depth about some areas that they wanted to talk about. And this evening we don't seem to be doing that. So if I'm assured that we're going to be having an opportunity in the future to revisit this, then I will, as Julia has done, jot some things down in writing and bring them back.
We can revisit that as often as you want, Leo. The only problem is last week it was simply a report from the committees, and it didn't lend itself to an in-depth discussion. So now it's on the agenda when the Assembly convenes. We can put this on as an ongoing basis, but as Julia said, the problem has been the co-chairs have done yeoman's work in trying to bring in people and saying, you have a relationship with county government, let's say the Workforce Investment Board or the Wastewater Collaborative, and they have tried to bring them back to the county structure. In other words, is there any impediments in their work? Is there any deficiencies in how they deal with county government that can be related to how we are set up? And unfortunately, despite trying, they haven't gotten those answers. People have basically avoided that. They've basically saying, oh, we get X amount of dollars from the county and we have this relationship, but they haven't really addressed the structure, which, I mean, you can say, well, that's a good thing. Maybe they don't have any problems, but this is, as Deborah says, this is where we're headed, and we haven't gotten really that much of an input from any of the organizations who've spoken. Now, I agree also that we are a part of county government, and we should certainly I have a seat at the table, so does Julia. We can certainly bring our input into what we think all the Assembly thinks is the deficiencies. One thing that's brought up over and over again is the weighted vote. A lot of people don't like the weighted vote. We're under constraints from the Constitution. We have to have we can only do things in a certain way. Paul Niswicki did talk about regional representation, cutting the Cape up into different areas. And I pointed out that if you cut it up into 7 areas, even if you cut it up into 15 areas, the area from Provincetown to Orleans would have 1 representative at this table. And some people are happy with that. So that's one thing that's been on the table. Paul Niswicki also talked about the structure of the county commissioners. He mentioned that not only is there sort of, as Tom addressed, sort of a kind of a fuzzy area as to who's responsible for what, but there's only 3 of them, which means that 2 people could make a decision, and that can, could create internal dissension. So those are the two things that I see that have come out of the two areas that have been addressed, and that's about it. Yeah.
Well, just touching on both those areas then, and the weighted vote issue in the Assembly is something that I certainly wrestled with when I served on the Charter Review Committee, but to rectify that or change that is going to take some massive restructuring, and I'm not sure. There was a couple of different methods that were discussed, having each town representative run Cape-wide. There's a lot of issues to try to resolve that. I came to the realization that for what we do here and what our function is, it's probably not a bad system just to leave it as it is. But with that said, I've also looked at the current county commissioners, and I do feel that 3 county commissioners are a wrong number. I feel that having them run as a partisan seat is also throws an interesting twist into it. I personally would rather see 5 commissioners. I would rather see them follow the same sort of geographic standards that our representatives follow, so that the Cape residents are assured that their area will always have a representative. Presently, right now, we have a peculiar situation. We're lucky to have a representative from the Lower Cape, a representative from Mid Cape, and a representative from Upper Cape. But it just happens to be that kind of a unique situation. We could end up with 3 county commissioners, one being from Falmouth, one being from Sandwich, and one being from Barnstable, say. As long as they're not all from the same town, they could certainly be one from each town which abut each other. I'll even use my towns, for example. We could end up with a county commissioner from Chatham, Harwich, and Brewster. And, when you talk about regionalization, and I know the function of the county commissioners is for the Cape-wide situation, but let's face it, people always carry their hometown with them in their back pocket. I think it would be a cleaner form of government if we had the 5 county commissioners, and again, each would represent pretty much the geographic areas going by right now what we have for our representatives. That's one avenue that I think should be changed. And, I would like to see where you guys feel about that.
Chris is trying to get in here. Chris?
Yeah, sorry. I'm just wanted to say something because from my perspective, there was a much stronger statement being made by Mr. Niedzwiecki and some others about efficiency and about that meaning a strong single executive with less oversight. And whether he was speaking specifically about the Cape Cod Commission, I'm sure it would make his job easier and more efficient if there was no oversight. But if we are, if we're talking about having some comments, I would welcome a discussion about the benefits of efficiency over having any oversight.
Julia?
Well, Paul wasn't speaking about his vision of the commission. He was speaking of the other parts, and he stated very strongly that he felt it was extremely important to have an executive and a legislature of some sort that was an oversight, had an oversight function. He just wanted a regionally elected, or at least he was suggesting a regionally elected group that was not town-based in this way, and a strong single executive, which he didn't discuss whether that would be an elected official or an appointed. That was my understanding of what he said. But it wasn't a question of lack of oversight. He stressed that he agreed with that concept.
Okay. Well, do we want to...
Can I just go on the record as disagreeing with the tenor of his statements? As presented by
We all
Julia.
hear, we all hear through different ears. Huh?
Sure. Can we get back to Leo's point, which is, what do we want to see happen? What we're going to come up with as a group to recommend or to that we might feel would work collectively, rather than continually going back to 2 or 3 other individuals who are not elected, who may have limited experience with the county, less so than many of us. Are we going to have that discussion?
What do you want to discuss now?
Leo was talking about having this on the agenda so we can discuss amongst ourselves what we would like to see.
Sure. I mean, you can do that, but you got to realize that this commission is a creature of the commissioners. Now, I had a brief discussion as to whether I thought it was within their authority to do that. I'm not going to go back to that. I mean, I made my point, and that's in the past. Okay? The reason I'm on there is not because I'm Speaker of the Assembly. The reason it's there because I was appointed. I was asked to do it by the 2 co-chairs. Same thing with Julia. She was asked to do it. So we don't have. They're not asking us what we think. On the other hand, we can tell them what we think, and they have to listen. So I'm going to say is that.
Sure.
As long as we understand that we don't have, in this process anyway, in another charter process we would, but we don't have an official position, and neither do the commissioners.
I too am in favor of putting stuff on paper.
Sure.
I would love to come back here in the next meeting with my individual recommendations for all of you. If you all want to do the same, we can start to hash them out. I think, just generally speaking, we have a functioning legislature, we have a functioning executive, we have personnel at the county that do their jobs. I'm not sure what the hue and cry was to look at, shaking that all up, but since we're having the discussion, let's have the discussion. We have an MMS consultant's report on the table. Just for kicks, we hired someone to tell us what it should be, and we seem to be ignoring it all over the place. But if you want to keep this on the agenda, I'll come with prepared notes next time.
I will put this on the agenda unless something comes up that's just going to take up an enormous amount of time, which I don't anticipate. So you can expect it'll be on the agenda at the next meeting.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I just kind of like to add a little kind of thought here. I mean, I certainly agree with what Spiro and Leo have said, because if we notice what's happened in our whole discussion has been driven by one person's comments to this committee. That's what we've all focused upon. Now, I remember when, I'm very new here. I haven't, county government, I'm new. But when this all started, that there was going to be a charter review and a county commission, it was rumored that this was being driven by a process that had already decided the outcome. I'm going to take it on faith that that's not what's happening, that this group is going to come up with, this county commission is going to come up with something, but I think that we ought to have a voice and a role in that. And the only way we can do that is by coming to consensus among ourselves. And I will be happy to write down my ideas for what they're worth for our next meeting, and I would hope that it would be on our agenda till the matter's resolved with the special commission.
Yeah, Tom?
I think, as Mary Lou pointed out, and as a member of the commission, they are, I think, legitimately studying the vision. What's the vision for what this county government structure should be delivering? I assume they will be sitting there saying, do we want them to regionally be running our DPWs? Do we want them to be running our schools? There are a lot of places where you have one superintendent instead of 15, or how many school superintendents we have, and they're handling a school system that's easily as large as this one would be. If they come out of their discussion with a vision that that's what they're looking for, then the structure is very different. If they come out of it with the idea that we deliver many services that assist towns, and it's a $25 million budget, and we think they can do that more efficiently or keep doing it in the way they're doing it, that's a whole nother sort of discussion. Because, naturally from my town's perspective, you know, we have a $160 million budget. So I'd be very interested in how the county was going to, you know, say, here's where we'll assist you, Barnstable, in doing X, Y, or Z, and because there's our vision of how that could all happen, and then what structure or form would follow from that. So I think it's a good idea to keep this discussion on there. I think our individual comments would be good. But if that commission comes up with a different vision, maybe we're nibbling at it, and they may be taking a big chunk of something that they want to try to put before the voters.
Suggestion is to try to pick up on what Spiro said, and also Deborah, is that rather than have, I mean, I sit at the table, but I'm just one of 25. I'm not really there to represent the assembly. I'm there as someone who was appointed along with the other 25. But what we could do, and it would put a little strain perhaps on our clerk, is if we have this discussion again, if somebody, and following up on what Julia said, and we put something down on paper, we could simply write a letter or submit something to the committee, simply saying, this is the feelings, you know, we took a vote and we decided to send a certain communication, and we feel that A, things are working fine and you shouldn't do anything, or just some kind of a communication giving the sense of the majority of the delegates as to the direction. It may be something very general, saying we think you're doing good work and keep it up, but you know, just simply to let them know that we're aware of the process, we're part of the process, and that we have feelings, you know, from our standpoint, and we could submit that under the clerk. And for, you know, if you guys want to do that, it's a little bit of work because we'd all have to agree on it, or at least a majority would have to agree on it. So, you know.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's very premature for us to agree on anything. I mean, it may be, in fact, be impossible, but I definitely think it's premature.
It is premature.
But I do think that we could have a lot of fruitful discussion of different visions and different structures and share those ideas. I'm doubtful that we're ready for
well, my point is that we're a separate body, so no, we can have discussions among ourselves, but how do we get those, to what end? Because the commission itself is the one who's going to make the decision, so we have to communicate to them.
Well, we would be able to communicate that, yes, since we're there, you and I don't think that's that big a problem yet. There could come a time when we did want to have an official position, but I think we're a long way from there.
Cheryl?
But some of us have to eat before we.
Yes, so I'll make my comment very quick, which is if you listen to what everyone just said, I actually think there is a common thread, and that the letter we're talking about actually just wrote itself, which is we don't have to come to an agreement about what the vision is, because we never will. But the point is that form follows function, just like they taught me in dental school. Your teeth are shaped according to what you want to do with them. Just like the structure of county government should be shaped according to what we want to do with it. That's exactly what you just said. We're not going to decide this winter what county should do in the next 25 years. But I think we could ask this commission that if they make any recommendations, they don't just make a recommendation for the fun of making a recommendation, but they support it with the foundation of, here's why we're making it, because our vision of what the county is going to do in the next 10 years has changed. They should defend it, not just say it's more efficient or it makes stronger government, which is what upsets me, because those are nebulous words that mean different things. So I think there is a chance for, maybe it'll be very simple, but just asking the commission to be that specific in what they set out to do would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure, that will be. Thank you. All right, if we'll rejoin this discussion in a future agenda, probably next week. Your reports of committees, do we have reports from the Committee on Economic Affairs, Paul?
I would like to move that the minutes as revised of the meeting of November 2nd, the Standing Committee on Economic Affairs be approved. I believe all the members of the committee who were there are present today.
You're running it, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think it's
okay. Report from the clerk.
You got the packet, you got the list, you know what's going on the 21st of December. So that's my big report. Just get back to me.
Okay. Any other business to be brought before the committee? Nothing.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Well, I thought I was going to have time.